Why do some of God's brightest lights burn only for a moment? Were they gone too soon or called right on time? What if 30 years is enough to change the world? These are stories of faith too powerful to die. Men and women who finished the race early, and here's why it matters. The Son of God completed his mission in just over 3 decades. Stephen preached one fiery sermon and was gone before the church's first anniversary. James, son of Zebedee, never wrote an epistle. Herod's sword ended his life in his 30s. Josiah reformed Judah with uncommon zeal, yet died at 39. In God's economy, impact is not measured in birthdays, but in faithfulness. Paul measures his worth not by years, but by whether he had finished his race. David's epitaph was not about age, but mission. He served the purpose of God in his own generation before falling asleep. Even Jesus, after the resurrection, told Peter not to compare his path with John's. Today we look at 10 such remarkable lives, Christians whose time was brief, but whose impact still resounds. Proof that even a short race, when faithfully run, can echo for generations. 10. William Borden. William Whiting Borden was born into extraordinary privilege, the heir of a Colorado silver fortune. Yet from the moment he felt called to missions as a young man, he began giving his wealth away to advance the gospel. At Yale, Borden gathered friends for dawn prayer meetings that soon spread across campus. His leadership in the student volunteer movement only deepened his resolve. His future belonged to Christ. Borden joined the China Inland Mission, setting his course toward China's Hui Muslims. On the way, he stopped in Cairo to master Arabic, even writing sermons in Quranic style. But there, meningitis struck, and at just 25, his race was over. His remembered motto captured the spirit of his life: no reserves, no retreats, no regrets. 9. Rich Mullins. Rich Mullins was a barefoot troubadour who disliked celebrity but wrote songs sung by millions, Awesome God, and sometimes by step. He lived simply, giving much of his royalties away, and even taught at a Navajo reservation rather than chasing fame. In September 1997, a car crash on an Illinois highway killed him at just 41. A close friend once described him as the uneasy conscience of Christian music. Amid the consumerism of the 1990s, Mullins lived nomadically, donating royalties to Native American causes and echoing the prophetic poverty of Amos. Mullins once said, "I would rather live on the verge of falling and let my security be in the all-sufficiency of the grace of God than to live in some pietistic illusion of moral excellence." His songs continue to stir hearts today, carrying both the ache and the wonder of discipleship. 8. Henry Martyn. Henry Martyn, a brilliant Cambridge fellow, gave up a promising academic career to take the gospel abroad. Arriving in India in 1806, he quickly mastered local languages and produced the New Testament in Urdu and Persian, along with parts of the Old Testament in Persian and Arabic. Though frail in health, he pressed on with relentless dedication. As a linguist missionary in Ottoman Persia, he carried his work into a world of colonial rivalries and Islamic strongholds. Isolation marked his path, yet it forged in him an unbreakable resolve. By 1812, sick and exhausted from constant travel, he was still revising his Persian translation when fever overtook him at just 31. He died with drafts in hand, leaving behind manuscripts that continued to spread the word long after his burial. His last recorded prayer captured his life's essence: "Let me burn out for God." His brief flame still lights mission work wherever those scriptures are read. 7. Robert Murray McCheyne. Pastor of St. Peter's in Dundee, Scotland, Robert Murray McCheyne lived only 29 years but became legendary for his devotion. In the 1830s, his sermons drew crowds so large that policemen had to hold back the listeners. Yet he wasn't a celebrity preacher. Friends said his holiness was felt even in silence. Typhus struck him after visiting the sick in his parish, and he died in 1843. His most lasting contribution may be his one-year Bible reading plan, still widely used. He once wrote, "A man is what he is on his knees before God, and nothing more." 6. Sadhu Sundar Singh. Born into a wealthy Sikh family in Punjab, Sundar Singh burned a Bible as a boy in anger, only to have a vision of Christ a few days later that changed his life forever. He donned the saffron robe of a Sadhu, becoming the apostle with the bleeding feet, walking barefoot across India and Tibet. Known for deep mystical prayer, he endured persecution from both Hindus and colonial authorities. In 1929, at age 39, he disappeared during one of his Himalayan journeys, likely perishing in the mountains. One of his memorable sayings was, "I am not worthy to follow in the steps of my Lord, but like him, if need be, I will gladly die for his people." 5. David Brainerd. David Brainerd's life was marked by both frailty and fervor. Expelled from Yale for criticizing a tutor, he turned instead to mission work among Native Americans in New England. He battled tuberculosis on the colonial frontier, often coughing blood as he preached through interpreters in freezing forests. In 1747, he died at just 29, cared for in the home of Jonathan Edwards, where Edwards' daughter Jerusha nursed him until the end. Brainerd's diary, later edited by Edwards, reveals both spiritual passion and deep struggles with depression, echoes of Elijah's despair in the cave. Edwards' publication of the journal went on to inspire William Carey, Henry Martyn, and countless others. Brainerd once prayed, "Oh, that I might never loiter on my heavenly journey." His brief, burdened life quickened the steps of a global missionary movement. 4. Nabeel Qureshi. Nabeel Qureshi was raised a devout Ahmadi Muslim, but friendships with Christians led him to investigate the gospel. After years of searching and debate, he confessed Christ and later became a speaker with Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. His book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, became a bestseller and introduced countless readers to his journey of faith. In 2016, he was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer, which claimed his life a year later at just 34. Even from his hospital bed, he posted video updates, humbly asking for prayer and pointing others to hope in Christ. One of his most quoted lines was, "Jesus was and is the only God who humbled himself to die for me." Qureshi showed the church how to contend with conviction while caring with compassion. His brief life compressed the apologetics of a generation into a testimony lived with vulnerability, communicating truth in love. 3. Keith Green. Keith Green was a fiery voice of the late 1970s Jesus movement. His concerts often felt more like altar calls, with songs such as Asleep in the Light confronting complacency in the church. In an era marked by rock star excess, Keith and his wife Melody chose a life of simplicity and communal living through Last Days Ministries, an echo of John's wilderness cry. Committed to radical generosity, they gave away records freely to anyone who asked, trusting God to provide. In July 1982, tragedy struck when a small plane crashed shortly after takeoff from their Texas property, killing Keith, 2 of his children, and several friends. He was only 28. His words still ring as a summons. This generation of Christians is responsible for this generation of souls on the earth. His legacy endures through songs that are both prophetic and tender. Create in me a clean heart from Psalm 51. And O Lord, you're beautiful, a worship classic still sung in churches around the world. 2. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. German pastor and theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer became a central figure in resisting Hitler. He helped form the Confessing Church, spoke boldly against Nazi ideology, and even became connected to plots aimed at opposing the regime. Arrested in 1943, he spent 2 years in prison, where he wrote reflections later published as letters and papers from prison. In April 1945, just weeks before the war's end, he was executed at Flossenburg concentration camp at the age of 39. A witness recalled him praying with serenity moments before his death. His most famous line still challenges the church. When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. His life remains a striking example of costly discipleship in the face of tyranny. Jim Elliot, along with Nate Saint, Ed McCulley, Pete Fleming, and Roger Udarian, later remembered as the Ecuador Five, attempted first contact with the Huaorani tribe of Ecuador in 1956. After months of careful preparation, the men were speared to death on a riverbank. Elliot was only 28. His widow, Elizabeth, later returned to live among the very people who had killed her husband, eventually seeing them embrace the gospel. Jim's journal contains perhaps the most quoted missionary line in history. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Their sacrifice was not a strategy, but a vivid expression of faithfulness, and it became a defining story of modern missions. When we look back at these 10 lives, we notice something striking. Their stories are short, but their echoes are long. Each one reminds us faithfulness is measured not in years, but in density. But we're not here to romanticize early death. We're here to learn from Christ, the pattern behind them all. Jesus shows us that a life doesn't have to be long to be complete. He lived with clarity of purpose. He knew time was urgent. He knew the night was coming. And with his final breath, he finished what he was sent to do. After the resurrection, when Peter asked about John's future, Jesus replied simply, "Follow me." The lengths of our stories will differ, but the calling is the same. Follow faithfully. So whether our days are many or few, the question is not, how long will I live, but what will I live for? Because in God's hands, even a short life can bear fruit that lasts forever.